What's going on, guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA UFC 253 recap show. I'm your host, Ryan Galloway, and joining me is Jordan Ellis. Jordan, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Not too bad. We had a great card this past weekend, obviously UFC 253. One that provided a lot of interesting takeaways going forward in the divisions that the fights were in. But we'll jump right in at the main event between Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. And I'll just quickly, straight away, take credit for predicting that it wouldn't be this firefight that everyone was trying to say it was going to be. And it was just a dominant performance by Israel, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think we were on the same page with this one. I didn't expect it to be as easy as it was for Israel. I thought he'd have to maybe survive a scary first round with Costa coming at him, but he didn't even have to survive that. Costa didn't do anything. It was really a case of him not showing up and Israel Adesanya just looking fantastic. So, props to him. He looked fantastic, but Costa really just didn't do anything. So there's not really much to talk about from his side of things. It's just all about Adesanya looking fantastic, smashing them leg kicks, landing beautiful shots. It was a similar knockout to what he did on Whittaker, where he just leant back and tapped him around the side of the head. It was perfect, and it was exactly what he needed after, a disappointing performance against Yoel Romero. He come back. He's a star, in my opinion. He's one of the brightest stars in the UFC, and KOs like that only go, to make his legend bigger.
Yeah, it just goes to the testament how dangerous Israel is on the feet and how frightening he is to face when a fighter like Paulo Costa completely switches up his style because he's too worried of getting countered, right? That was what it was. He wanted to have Israel throw first so he could land his own counters, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense because if you're Paulo Costa, you don't have a record of being this amazing counter striker like Israel or even Yoel Romero in that fight. The reason that fight was so boring is because both guys are so dangerous in their counter striking and neither one wanted to give anything for the other to counter off. And obviously when Israel did it in that fight, he found out the hard way, he got clocked real quick. Whereas in this one, I feel like Israel probably could have just gone forward all he wanted and Costa's he's not some crazy counter striker who's going to put you out. But Israel was very reserved, waited for Costa to get kind of frustrated, waited for him to start throwing those body kicks and putting himself in danger. And then he landed a head kick of his own and put him away. So, perfect performance. As for all the trash talking, I know some people weren't too happy with that and thought it was a bit unprofessional. But you got to remember, all week Costa had been baiting Izzy, all week. All the lead up to this fight, not just the fight week, before that. He was baiting him, trying to get him to say stuff. And Israel really wasn't giving a whole lot. But then in the cage, he did what he needed to do, and he got to put on a show afterwards.
Yeah, the trash talk was all a bit weird, and especially post-fight with the humping and just saying he's going to do stuff to Costa's coach. It's just all a bit weirdly sexual, which is not what you want when you're watching UFC, but that's Izzy's vibe, I guess. So, just move on from that quite quickly. Just get back to the fight. He was fantastic, and none of that should take away from it. It was a nice build-up, and it was disappointing. I think Dana White said post-fight he was disappointed that it weren't a fight that many thought it would be. I thought it'd be more a case of Costa gassing and maybe getting caught at that point. But I'm pretty sure he still had a full tank because he didn't do anything. So it's just frustrating in the fact that he didn't live up to many people's potential and Adesanya just shut him down. But he's a champion who looks like it. Who's going to beat him? That's the question now. I don't really see anyone at middleweight who's going to beat him. So maybe he moves up to light heavyweight. Even speaking about heavyweight, so there's a huge future there for him. And Costa's just got to go away and assess what went wrong and change some things because that just not showing up at all on fight night is not the best.
Well, for Israel, I'm getting shades of John Jones here, right? When he was at his first start of his title run where he'd cleared out most of the division and people were wondering what was going to happen. Would anyone be able to come up and challenge him? And the thing about Jones was it was the unlikely people that we saw who did actually give him his biggest tests, like Thiago Santos first. And obviously Dominick Reyes was a big one, myself included. Not a lot of people thought Reyes had a chance against Jones, but he went in there and gave him a tough fight. And I think we're going to see the same at middleweight for Israel. Right now on paper, he looks like he's just going to smash everyone. There doesn't look like anyone that can really challenge him in the top 10. But I feel like there's probably a few people in there that have potential of having a tough fight for Israel. I've read that people think Till might do that, and I'm not the I don't know Till's style too well. I've only seen a few of his fights. So I don't know if he's some crazy technical striker like Israel, but maybe that's a fight for him that could give him some trouble. Outside of that, I feel like Hermansson's a tough fight for him. I don't think I'd still take Israel as the favorite, but I think Hermansson's just a tough night for him because of the grappling threat in that one. But yeah, I expect us to see Israel reign as champion for a long while. Few more years to come, unless he decides to jump up in weight divisions or whatever he wants to do, which right now, after seeing that, I'm more than happy for him to do. He fought a big guy like Paulo Costa and it was no problem for him. He's going to be fine at light heavyweight. Heavyweight might be a bit of a stretch, but if he picks the right matchups, it's not going to matter the size, is it? So I'd love to see that Jones fight, but I don't think that's on the table.
Well, first things first, you need Jared Cannonier to beat Robert Whittaker, because I think that gives him a steady progression of contenders. He's still quite new with the belt, and we're all getting hyped and saying who's going to beat him, but he's defended the belt twice and looked impressive once. So don't want to get too carried away. But Cannonier, if he beats Whittaker, that's an obvious challenger. Whereas Whittaker beats Cannonier, I don't know if we want to see that fight again yet. So, and then you've got the whole Hermansson-Till fight, which is two good fights. I think Hermansson is the dark horse of the division. Darren Till, as much as I'm obviously a Scouser too, and I'd love to see him in that position, I think the fight itself would be really boring. I think you'd see a Wonderboy Till fight. They'd stand there looking at each other and tapping hands and admiring each other's work. I don't think it'd be any type of firefight. It'd be similar to the Yoel fight, maybe a bit better than Yoel, but it would be that. And Darren Till's not there yet. He's still got work to do. So if he gets by Hermansson and Whittaker beats Cannonier, that's who you might see facing him next though. So Darren Till is something of a star and they are keen to push him. I just hope for his sake they take the time and he rattles off a few wins and he looks impressive. So hopefully Cannonier beats Whittaker just for the sake of the middle of the division, to keep it ticking, to keep Adesanya content, because I just don't think he's got interest in fighting Whittaker again.
Yeah, I don't have interest in seeing that fight at this stage. If Whittaker goes out there and smashes Cannonier, puts him away in the first or second, maybe then I'll have a bit more interest in the rematch. But as it stands, I don't think there's going to be enough change in Whittaker's style or, to really threaten Izzy. And I know maybe it was a mental problem in that first one. Maybe it was just overwhelmed being the champion and being put in that front of that big crowd and having to defend his title. But I need to see more before I'm on board with seeing it a second time. And this Cannonier fight could be that. If Whittaker goes out there and smashes him, there's no denying he's the next title challenger, right? Even if Till goes and knocks out Hermansson, or Hermansson knocks out or submits Till, I still think if Whittaker wins, he should be next in line. And I hope they honour that. But yeah, no, it was an interesting fight. It definitely was good to see that fight come to fruition, because obviously it had been built up for a long time now, since when he won the belt in October last year. And obviously fought Yoel in the meantime. Not the best fight, but hey, that'll happen. And we'll jump on to the co-main event here, which was a bit of a surprise to me in the result. When Jan Blachowicz beat Dominick Reyes to become the light heavyweight champion. And a beautiful performance by Jan. I don't think I've seen him perform that well before. And another thing was, Reyes seemed like he had too much respect for Blachowicz's counter-striking. He didn't want to go forward. He didn't want to put himself in danger. And the few times he did, he got punished for it. So it was just a beautiful performance by Jan. What do you think?
Yeah, it was perfect. It was great to see him do that as well, because he'd been around for so long. When we originally spoke about the fight last week, I was picking Reyes just because I thought I was picking potential over what I knew. And then on fight day, I changed my mind and I went with Jan, and I was the only one of our staff to do it, so I was quite surprised by that as well, because in my mind it was a 50-50 fight. I just think a lot of people gave the edge to Reyes just off that Jones performance, which he did lose. Like, it was close, but he lost, and I don't think it's... And I don't think there's many people calling that a robbery. Everyone just thought it was close either way. Mm-hmm. So I think Jan just looked great. He looked stronger. He looked more prepared for that fight. He looked like someone who'd had 35 fights or whatever he'd had, compared to someone who's had about 12 or 13. He just looked like ready to be champion. But as I said last time, I think this belt's going to keep changing hands now. I think Thiago Santos could possibly take it off Blachowicz, and I think Reyes could probably take it off Santos. I think it's going to be a really fun division, and just strap yourself in and get ready to watch.
Yeah, I definitely think a rematch with Santos could be a rough one for Blachowicz. But the other fight people are talking about is the Rumble, Anthony Johnson fight, because obviously he's come back in the light heavyweight division in February, I think he debuts. And would they put him straight into a title shot, do you reckon? Because he's retired on a title shot, didn't he? He lost to Cormier and retired. So maybe they throw him right back in there for top of this division, fighting Yarn for the belt, which would be a great fight, and I'd be on board to see that one. Because I don't think people are going to buy a pay-per-view to see Yarn Blachowicz. I don't think he's a big enough name yet. He needs to beat a staple athlete, you know what I mean? And at the top of that division, there's not really names at the moment. People know Dominick Reyes because he's fight with Jones. Outside that, people don't really know like Anthony Rakic or Thiago Santos maybe, because of the fight with Jones as well. But he doesn't have a name there. He needs a name, so Rumble could be that for him. And if he gets a win there, who knows?
Yeah, and then there's also the possibility of Jones. I know he said he's going to heavyweight, but as Dana White was saying post-fight, nothing's done yet, nothing's signed. He's not confirmed anything really. He's just sent a few tweets. So, and he wanted Jan originally. He was happy to fight Blachowicz, and then the Reyes talk kind of turned him off, and he was starting to look on a heavyweight. So that could be something you see him just pop back down, take his belt back, then move back up. It wouldn't surprise me at all. So there's a lot going on there, and I do agree that Jan Blachowicz, he's not capable of headlining a pay-per-view show. Rumble could do that, but do you want to put Rumble in that situation? If Rumble loses against Blachowicz, where does he go from there? I'd prefer him to like get the chance to knock someone out basically and show everyone why we like him so much, and then that would sell a fight better. But the UFC know better than me, and I'm sure they'll match him correctly, and we'll get some fun fights. It's just trying to sell them. That's their job now.
I just had $1 million idea, so I'm going to pitch it to you and you're going to let me know what you think. How about we do Israel Adesanya versus Rumble?
I don't think that fight makes sense without a belt on the line.
True.
Is Israel going to take that risk against someone like that? Because it's going to have to be at light heavyweight, so he's not going to have a belt, is he?
They're former training partners too now, think about it, because he was training with Rumble when Rumble was meant to fight Jones.
It'd be a great fight, but I think it would... I'd pick Izzy in it. Even at 205, I'd pick Izzy in it, I think. But it would be about getting a belt. And at Adesanya, if he thinks if Robert Whittaker beats Jared Cannonier, which is a very likely possibility because he's a really talented fighter, and Cannonier, he's got a couple of good wins, but he's not a number one contender who I'd be screaming and shouting about yet anyway. If Robert Whittaker wins that fight and Adesanya doesn't fancy doing the rematch, you might see him go to light heavyweight, and I'd give him an immediate shot at Jan Blachowicz as well. So that sells that. That sells that. So there's lots of options, and then after that you can get Rumble and Jones. It's really fun around there right now, and I know some of the names aren't the most popular and they're not going to sell pay-per-views, but for me as a fan, it's going to be fun watching them.
Do you reckon there's any chance that we do see Israel fight Jones at light heavyweight without a belt on the line? Do you reckon? Because if Jones wants to go to heavyweight and he's like, before I go to heavyweight, I want to take Israel on a light heavyweight, but obviously neither one will be champion there. Do you think that fight could happen?
Yeah, I don't think it really matters with that fight, the belt. Obviously, it's a nice little addition, and it wouldn't be too complex. Like, Israel could potentially have the light heavyweight belt by the end of the year if he wanted it. They could match him against Jan, he'd beat that, and then February, March next year they could make him against Jones for the light heavyweight title. It is possible, but I think that fight's inevitable. It's just about timing, and I think now's the time really to make it. I think right now is the time. Jones is in limbo. He doesn't know where he's going. Israel doesn't really know what's happening with his division. I'd cash in now on that one. I wouldn't be waiting too long.
Yeah, because I fear that if Jones commits to heavyweight and bulks up to 240 pounds, we're not going to see that fight because Israel will just be too small. Unless he goes up to heavyweight, then I just think it's not as competitive. I think it's more competitive at light heavyweight, and I hope we see it soon. But we'll jump on to some other fights on the card. Obviously, the opposite to a heavyweight, the flyweight's on the card right before the co-main event. The best fight of the night. Awesome fight. I was really psyched on this one. Brandon Royval got the victory over Kattar of France. And he started off with some adversity, didn't he? He got knocked down with that right hook and got straight back up, spun around, hit him with a spinning back elbow, dropped Kattar of France. They had a little grappling exchange from memory. Had it all, really. And he finished him with that guillotine. What do you reckon?
He's just so impressive, Brandon Royval. It's just like, where's he been all this time? He just popped onto the scene. Beat two contenders. Tim Elliott's a former title challenger. Kattar of France is top five-ish. He's around that mark as well. and really he made easy work of them. I know he started off a bit, he got popped, but besides that, he was walking France down. He was taking his digs. He was throwing back. He just didn't seem to have any care in the world in there. He just almost seemed too big for the division. And now I just look forward to, hopefully they make it. I'd happily watch this for 5 rounds. Brandon Royval against Brandon Moreno. That is a firefight. It's got fight of the year written all over it. It'd be brilliant. So I hope they make that, and then the winner of that can fight for the title. But I'm so impressed with Royval. The only thing that annoys me about him is the fact that he seems to be quite down on himself after fights. He was complaining about getting hit too much and things like that, which is obviously what makes him a great, would-be champion. But he was fantastic again, and he got another bonus. So he's certainly one to watch, and especially in that flyweight division, because he looks huge.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just trying to think. I think Brandon Moreno is fighting Alex Perez, isn't he? Isn't that booked?
Yeah, well, whoever comes to that, I would match him against
Yeah, I think that's a
this
good
one.
fight.
I think I hope Brandon Moreno just comes through it just because I want this fight. I think it would be the best fight you can make for flyweight, and also flyweight gets some stick, and sometimes it is boring, but that is not going to be boring. I tell you that for starters. And if you want to start hyping this division, you've got a champion in Figueiredo who's dominant and looks lethal on the feet, and then you've got fighters like these who are gonna go at it. So yeah, I'd love that fight.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Brandon Royval fight anyone because both his fights he's had have both been entertaining, and he got finished in both, got finishes there in both of them. So whatever he wants to do, I'm keen to see it. And with that, we'll just pick out some other moments and things from the card. And one other thing I wanted to bring up was the weight cutting Israel was complaining about. He wanted people to get 80% of the purse taken aside from 30 for missing weight, and that'll lead us into these two fights here, which were the first one on the main card between Hakeem Dawodu and Zubaira Tukugov. I think Tukugov, I'm probably saying that wrong. I think he missed weight by 5 pounds, didn't he? He came in at 150. And also, let me go to the prelims. It was Young, wasn't it? Yeah, Shane Young against Ladovit Klein. Against Klein. Klein came in 5 pounds over as well. And just that one first, awesome performance by Klein. I saw his tape coming into this one on Twitter, and he had a bunch of head kick knockouts, so I was really worried for Young, and obviously he got slammed with that head kick and then finished shortly after. So good performance. But what do you think about this weight cutting and the people coming in overweight and not taking the full time to try and make the weight? Do you think it should be an 80%, or do you think 30 is reasonable?
No, I think 80 is reasonable. I agree with Izzy wholeheartedly. I think a lot of these guys are making money outside the UFC. The actual purse they're making is not the be all and end all for a lot of fighters. And I think showing up, you should show up and you should do your job. And if you can't make that weight and you're not 100% sure you can make that weight, you shouldn't be competing there. So I feel like the risk of not making weight is not enough. And you're 30%, it's not enough. And it's not enough, for a loss on your record, a win or a loss. And I think the stats were getting released last year, whereas the people who don't make weight and come in 5 pounds over or whatever tend to win the fight. I think there was a stat of like so many won, so many lost. So I totally agree with Izzy, and I feel like a couple of his fighters got hard done by, and good on him for using his platform to kind of speak out against it, because I think 80-90% should be the penalty, because let's put these fighters off doing this. As he said, spend the next 90 minutes trying to cut weight, not recovering. Totally agree.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm not too sure how I stand on that one, but like when someone comes in 5 pounds over and they have an hour and a half to cut it and they're not even attempting to do it, there's something wrong there. Right? They should be punished further. They should be made to cut the weight. But, I don't know if they have medical problems, if they got to where they did and like physically they couldn't cut more weight. I don't know what's going on. So I think there's a lot more to it, but it was just interesting that he brought it up, especially in the octagon after his win. I think we'll jump on to the featured prelim then between Brad Riddell and Alex De Silva. Pretty good fight. I enjoyed that one. Obviously, it was quite even going into the third one. I think Silva got the first round for sure. Second round was very, very, very close. And then the third round, I thought Riddell snuck that one too. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Riddell did well. I think he rallied. He had a tough first round and he came back, and it was just one of them fights where kind of grit and determination and cardio and all that type of stuff just results in a win, just a hard fought win. He battled for it. I think he deserved it. Don't think there's any controversy. De Silva did really well in coming out and causing problems, but Riddell just weathered the storm, adapted, overcame it, and he looked great.
Yeah, I agree. Someone who didn't look too great, Diego Sanchez against Jake Matthews. Is it time for Diego Sanchez to hang it up?
No, I think it's about matching him rightly. I don't understand why you'd match him against Jake Matthews. Like, Jake Matthews is a young up and comer, and he really should have got Diego out today. You know, if you want to make a statement in terms of where you're going in this division, Diego Sanchez is not a natural welterweight. He's 39. He's well past his best. He's all these things everyone knows, and Jake Matthews couldn't get rid of him. And it was just, I think it looks bad for Jake Matthews. Diego Sanchez, he's got 3 fights, I think, on his contract. I'd like to see him fighting against, kind of maybe stand-up fighters who kind of, the old veterans, maybe the Cerrones or, people like that. Match him correctly and you could get a few more fun fights out of Sanchez. Match him against Jake Matthews, you're gonna get that. It's not gonna look good. And no one wins because it won't fight either, so...
Well, I got a match up for him then. If you want to give me your opinion on this one, how about Diego Sanchez versus Conor McGregor?
Maybe not that one. I couldn't believe Conor McGregor had the audacity to ask for that fight. He's got a cheek, hasn't he? And then he's got a cheek to carry on defending it. I respect Diego Sanchez as much as the next person. He's a brilliant fighter, but he's had his day, and to be calling him out at this stage when you're Conor McGregor it's just a bit of cheeky in my opinion, and I think he knows it.
What do you think of all that press conference stuff where Dana said that he was offended almost by McGregor sharing their screenshots and all that back and forth?
It's odd at Dana because the other week when he telling John Jones to release all the emails and things like that, so he's very he likes to go out and accuse people of not taking fights, but Dana's definition of someone declining a fight is them asking for more money, them asking for a date they want rather than a date he wants. So I do tend to side with the fighter on this, but Conor McGregor's no average fighter, so he's going to get the stick. I think Conor McGregor wanted the fight. He's been chasing a fight, and he literally on the messages, he's like, what about Diego then? So I do tend to side with McGregor on that. He wants a fight. In Dana's mind, it's not financially possible to give him a fight until July, and that's why Conor McGregor walked away from the sport. So it's easy to understand all sides, but I don't think Dana's really got a leg to stand on with the man code stuff. I think that's a bit ridiculous, the way he treats his fighters, the way he's always calling people out for ducking fights, and then Conor McGregor's like, I weren't ducking fights, here's the evidence, and now he's got a problem with that. So yeah, I'm with Conor McGregor on this one.
Well, it's just kind of weird because the UFC has always said they have to honour their athletes 3 fights a year. They have to give them 3 fights a year or they pay him out. Are they just going to pay Conor because he's not fighting because they won't book him to fight? What's going on there? Because if I had to pay someone to do nothing or I had to pay them to do their fights to no one, I'm paying them to fight to no one, So I don't know, maybe he has a different contract because of who he is and where he is in the sport and how much he's done for it. But that was just a little weird thing that I thought.
I think maybe Conor's contracted to quite a low contract in the sense that he signed it ages ago and hasn't signed a new one since. But then every fight he ends up getting more money anyway. So they might be happy to pay him, just say for instance, $1 million, whereas he would earn 30 million to fight with no crowd. And how can they generate that money? So I think it's that type of thing, and the UFC will probably be happy to pay him. But at this point, Conor McGregor's like, I've retired anyway. I don't need your $1 million or whatever it is. So it's a funny situation. But off the boxing he goes now, apparently.
Yeah, well, that'll be interesting. So against Pacquiao, right? That's what he was saying. Yeah, I don't know how that one will go for him. I don't know if it's a great idea, but it'll definitely make some money, so that's good for him. One more thing before we wrap it up. The other big news of the weekend was Dana White pretty much saying that the UFC is looking to book Colby Covington against Jorge Masvidal instead of Jorge Masvidal against Nate Diaz.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I think Masvidal's a true contender. I think he should be fighting true contenders as well. So Colby Covington, whatever you think about him, that's exactly what he is. He's a true contender. It's a great fight. It's a really great fight, and I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, same. I think that's the right move to make. The Diaz rematch just doesn't make sense to me. The first one wasn't competitive. I know a lot of people want to see it because of who the fighters are, but if Masvidal wants to make a run for that belt, he can't keep fighting the Diaz's and trying to get a McGregor fight. He needs to fight the other contenders. So his choices are pretty much Colby, Edwards, or forget Wonderboy, I guess. But like the only the ones that make the most sense, the one that makes the most sense, is Colby, because he's clearly the number one contender after Burns. If you'd say Burns is the number one contender over him, so he gets a win over Colby, he's right there for his rematch. If he gets a win over Edwards, it's kind of like, well, you're gonna fight Colby first, you know. So I think Colby's the right fight for him, and I look forward to seeing it. Hopefully, it happens this year.
I think it's a huge fight as well. I don't think the Nate Diaz fight is particularly big, and I think Colby Covington is getting to that level where he's a bona fide star, or he's a villain or whatever he is. But he's that will probably top a pay-per-view when it's just them two non-title bouts. I think it's that big. It could be that big, and I just think it's a great fight. Whereas Diaz, I love Diaz and I love watching him, but I do think he's past his best. I do think he got absolutely, battered last time. And then also the negotiation sides. I want fighters to get paid as much as they can, but he seems to drag it out for years, and there's got to be a reason. There's got to be some wiggle room in terms of, I want this much, you want to pay me that much, let's meet in the middle. But it seems like Diaz just has his number, sticks to it for 3 years, and then eventually caves. So I think that would just take too long to negotiate. And Jorge Masvidal's, I think he's mid-30s now, maybe 35, something along them lines.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to be fighting and making money. I don't think he should be sitting on the sidelines for X amount of time. He needs to be fighting. Colby Covington's a huge fight. And yeah, I think it's a better fight for Masvidal in terms of what he can, win off the back of beating Covington. He's next in line. If he beats Covington, he's next in line.
Yeah, and I mean, they could do it like for the MAGA belt and have Donald Trump bring out the belt. I know both guys are Donald Trump fans, but maybe that could be an interesting thing for the UFC to do there. But it's definitely the fight to make, and I think it is a big fight, like you said. I think the Diaz fight on paper sounds like the bigger fight because Diaz is such a star after those McGregor fights and stuff like that. But yeah, if he wants to make a run at the title, that's the fight he's going to have. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up?
No, that's all good.
All right. Well, we'll speak to you later in the week to preview this weekend's card, which is UFC Fight Night Home versus Aldana from memory. Am I correct on saying that?
Correct.
Excellent. Well, we'll speak to you then. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks, guys.